In the Israeli Museum. In fact, I don't know if you saw it, right across the street is both the Knesset building, the Parliament building, and next to that, right down the street, is the IRS building. Here in Israel, we call it the Second Wailing Wall. Yes. Okay. So, we're at the Israeli Museum, where the Dead Sea Scrolls and many other wonderful discoveries are housed. And this area where we are is called the Shrine of the Book, and this is where the Dead Sea Scrolls are kept. The white shape that you see behind you is actually a copy, much larger obviously, of the jars that the scrolls were found in, and the top. This is a copy of the top of the clay jar that 3 out of the first 5 scrolls were found in. And when you go inside, as you go down the steps and into the main display, just before you get to the last step, look to your left and your right, and you'll see 2 of those jars, those pottery jars that the first scrolls were found in, and you'll see their lids look just like this. So this is why you have this here. Now, let's talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls, shall we?
Yes.
All right. Everybody's probably heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but most of us probably don't really know why they're so important. And they're not just important to the world in general, they're important to biblical scholarship and to us as evangelical Christians in a uniquely special way. And I want to tell you why. But first, let me tell you a little bit of history about the scrolls. Up until 1947, the oldest copy of the Old Testament that we had, extant, meaning in existence, was the Aleppo Codex. A codex means something that's in a book form rather than in a scroll form. That's all it means, okay? And the Aleppo Codex was from roughly about 970 AD. AD. That was the oldest copy, original copy of the Old Testament that we had. So, people could say, unbelieving scholars could say, well, you don't even know that the Bible from the time of Jesus was even the same as the Bible we're reading today. We know the Bible we're reading today is the same as the Aleppo Codex, but that only goes back to 972 AD. After that, you have no idea if the Isaiah text that Jesus was reading is the same Isaiah we're reading today. Now, we who are evangelical Christians would say, no, we have the witness of our spirit that when we read the Bible, it's the Word of God, which is great, but we don't have any empirical evidence by which we could prove those scholars wrong. They also could amend passages, like a virgin shall conceive. They could say the word virgin was added later, and it wasn't really there in the original text, and therefore there is no messianic prophecy of the virgin birth, and we could say, no, that's not right, but we couldn't prove it, because we didn't have anything old enough to verify what the text said at the time of the birth of Christ, or before. Are you with me? Yeah. Now, all of that changed with the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, there were 2 Arab young men who were wandering around the caves around the Dead Sea, and they were throwing rocks into the cave, like you and I would throw rocks and skip them along a lake, you know? And the rocks would go thud and thud against the dirt on the inside of the cave. And as they were walking along, one of them went clink, and they were like, what is that? And so they crawled into the cave. It was a very narrow entrance, and they found these 5 scrolls in these jars that I'm talking to you about inside the cave. Well, they didn't really know what to do with them, so they left them, went and got their parents. Their parents came, their dads, got the scrolls out. These were Bedouin living out in the desert. They don't have an idea in the world what these scrolls are. They know they're not in Arabic, but that's about all they know. And so the fathers took the scrolls to a man in Bethlehem named Mr. Kando, Kando. He was Arab, but he was an antiquities dealer. So they took him to him to have him figure out what they were. Well, Mr. Kando didn't exactly know himself what they were, but he had a good friend here in Jerusalem. Now, this is 1947. This is before the Jewish War of Independence. This is before the United Nations created the modern state of Israel. So, all of this at the time was under the British mandate, and therefore travel from Bethlehem to Jerusalem and interaction like this was still possible. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. So he took the scrolls to a man in Jerusalem named John Trevor, Trever, John Trevor, who was with the American School of Oriental Research here in Jerusalem. And he he only took one scroll, actually. He took the Great Isaiah scroll, which was an entire scroll of the book of Isaiah, all 66 chapters.
Wow.
And he took it to John Trevor and he said to him, "What do you think this is?" Well, Trevor gently unrolled it to chapter 1 and immediately knew, wow, this is old. Now, he didn't know how old it was, but he knew it was really old. Yet, he was basically a graduate student. So he wasn't 100% sure he was in the position to decide what it was. So he called America. And he called Johns Hopkins University, where I went to school. I wasn't there then. This is 1947. I wasn't even born then. And he got William F. Albright on the telephone. Now, William Foxwell Albright is the greatest American archaeologist of all time, even to this day. He taught at Hopkins. He established the Near Eastern Studies Department at Hopkins. He wrote many, many books. He was a Methodist, and he was fairly conservative. I don't know that he was born again, but he was very conservative in his approach to biblical archaeology and the Bible. His position was that unless the Bible was proved to be wrong, we should assume it's right. Now, today today we have two schools of archaeology in biblical archaeology. They used to be called the Albright School of Archaeology, meaning mentality, not an actual school, and the non-Albright School of Theology. Those were people who believed that until the Bible was proved to be right, we ought to assume it's wrong. Okay, today we call it maximalists and minimalists. Minimalists are people who believe the minimum in the Bible is true, and unless we can prove it to be right, we assume it's wrong. Maximalists are Albright type people who assume the Bible's right unless you can prove it to be wrong. And oh, by the way, there has never been an archaeological discovery in history that has ever proved the Bible to be wrong. Just so you know. The more they dig out of the ground, the more the Bible proves to be right. Now, I will say in fairness, there are some archaeological discoveries that are open to interpretation and could go either way. A maximalist will see it as a confirmation of the Bible. A minimalist will see it as a non-confirmation. And they argue, but the stones are still the stones. It's how you interpret them. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. So there are a few like that. For example, in Jericho, the excavations in Jericho have not shown us the destruction of Jericho like the Bible describes. However, we didn't take you in there and show it to you. It's a little bit, so we didn't take you in there. But if you were to go in there and see the excavations, which I've seen many times, the amount of city that's excavated is not as big as this platform. So, okay, you dig that much down, fine. You don't find any proof of the destruction, but you're talking about a tiny, tiny bit of the city. So if there were more, perhaps we would find it. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are a few of those, but the vast amount of archaeological discoveries have confirmed the Bible again and again and again. Nonetheless, minimalists assume the Bible is always wrong. Why do they do that? Let's just take a